All right, so hello and welcome again to today's special session introducing PBS OASIS's new customer approval workflow. My name is Andrea Belgashke, and I am the National Program Manager for Customer Education and Outreach at PBS, and I'll be your session host today. Today, we're talking exclusively about PBS OASIS, that is our new Occupancy Agreement and Space Inventory system. PBS transitioned to the new system last year, and as with any big new rollout, we've had some ups and downs along the way. But today we have several members of our OASIS team on hand to discuss a new system improvement designed to address a challenge that was noted, and that's relating to the customer approval workflow. They'll be reviewing some key points about the system user roles and access. We're going to be sharing some demonstration videos to show you some really key elements of activities that you'll be performing in the system as hands-on users, and show you where to get some OASIS support resources. Most importantly, take your questions and comments in the Q&A pod that's on your Zoom menu screen, all during the course of the presentation. So let's take a moment and we're going to meet those fine folks from the OASIS team that we have with us today. They are my peers from the PBS Office of Portfolio Management and Customer Engagement. Today we have with us Deanne Salazar. Deanne is the PBS OASIS project manager, and she is a program specialist in PBS's National Rent Billing Office, focusing on customer billing and GSA policy. Deanne has been with GSA for more than 20 years, beginning her career in GSA Region 6, that's out in Kansas City, before moving to central office about 16 years ago. We also have with us Arissa Soper. Arissa has been with GSA for over 10 years, and she comes from Region 5 in Chicago. She spent the past 2 years or so becoming a real key member, a core team for that OASIS program and the National Rent Bill Office. So that was our presentation team and our experts who are going to be handling your Q&A today. Before we get into them and I turn it over, just a few more housekeeping announcements to make. So on the next slide, we'll take a look at some of those pieces. As you know, we have automatically muted your audio to help control the sound quality of the presentation today, but our team really encourages you to submit your questions and comments via the Q&A pod. That's where our behind-the-scenes experts are waiting to respond to you. We will answer as many questions as we can during the presentation as time allows. And a formal Q&A document capturing all the questions will be posted to our PBS OASIS site, which I posted in that chat, so that we really want to make sure that we take this opportunity to take your questions in today and respond to you and give you that resource after the presentation concludes. I emphasize the Q&A pod because there's also a chat pod, and I'll be sending some information out to you via that chat pod as well, but it's really more for Zoom technical issues, platform issues you may be having. So I'll be monitoring the chat pod for those types of issues, but please send all of your OASIS-based questions through the Q&A pod to our expert team. Okay, so now that's out of the way. Quickly, I do want to bring up a quick poll question before we get started with the presentation, and it just sort of helps us to understand a little bit more about you as a participant today. So the first thing I want to ask about is this. I want to ask about your role in the PBS OASIS program. If you can't see the pop-up window, you can see on your screen and you can reply in the chat, but we want to know, what role do you have in the tool? Perhaps you are here today because you're an agency CHAO. That's the customer internal authorized official who makes the decisions about who gets to be an ordering official from your agency. Maybe you are the ordering official, or maybe you're going to be a person who's assuming one of those new roles as a reviewer and a non-approver in the tool. If you're not quite sure what role you have yet, that's fine. Or if you're here for general knowledge, that's great. There are some things that you'll pick up along the way, but it will be very heavy on demonstration and actual activities in the tool. So it's really designed for users who are directly accessing and interfacing with the system. Okay, it looks like everybody's had a chance to pretty much vote. So let me go ahead and I'll end that poll and see where we're at with our demographics of our group today. Okay, so it looks like the largest community that we have with us today are going to be folks assuming that new non-approver role. So that's exciting. That's great that you're here with us today. Followed by ordering officials, our next big group. And then we've got some folks in for general knowledge. Cool. There's really something for everyone. So we appreciate you filling out the poll and kind of giving us an idea of who you are so that we can understand where your key interests lie and maybe where your questions are going to be mostly coming from based upon your role. All right, let me stop sharing that and bring up our very first presenter. As we move on here, I want to hand over the mic to our Arissa Soper, who is going to review the agenda and get us started with the formal part of our program. So Arissa, please take it away.
Thank you, Andrea. So today's agenda is going to cover user roles, the new customer portal and queries, also approving and rejecting an OA, which provides specific details on the new workflow, and general Q&A. We have allotted time after each demonstration to pause for questions related to the most recent topic, because today's training, as Andrea mentioned, is focused on the customer approval workflow. We'll only be taking questions related specifically to the newly launched approval workflow. So the general Q&A at the end is available for any workflow-related questions that were not answered earlier in the training. So let's get to it. First off, we have the customer user roles. I'll begin with the role that many of you are already familiar with, which is the ordering official. An ordering official can review all OA data associated for an assigned AB code. That includes OAs that are already billing or with the agency for approval. Ordering officials can also submit a billing question or a release of space request. They can also request clarification on an OA approval. And very importantly, ordering officials are the ones to approve or reject an OA. So everything the ordering official was allowed to do before the launch on June 10th remains the same. The newly created role is called the customer non-approver role. That role has the same access as an ordering official. However, they cannot approve an OA and they cannot reject an OA. And only ordering officials can approve or reject. This non-approver role was a direct result of the customer sessions we held in March just a few months ago. The outcome showed there was a considerable need to create a view-only role, which would minimize the number of customers who could actually approve an OA. So the non-approver role was born. I want to point out that this role is much more than a read-only role. It has maximum flexibility, allowing the users to do everything in the system aside from approving or rejecting OAs. Next. The ordering official and non-approver roles are not designated by GSA. Each agency's customer internal authorizing official, also known as CHOW, makes those decisions. In OASIS, users cannot have more than one role, meaning you can't be a non-approver for one AB code and an ordering official for another. The option is to either be an approver for all associated AB codes or an ordering official, not both. If you need to change your role, for example, from an ordering official to a non-approver, or you're a brand new user, you'll populate the customer user access form found on the PBS OASIS site. The link to both the website and the user form are attached at the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. So this is a screenshot of the top portion of the new access form. There are two additional sections that are not shown on the form, which capture the supervisor and the CHOW information. The user form has been revamped to now require 3 different signatures before OASIS approval can be provided: the requester, the supervisor, and the CHOW. If you're unaware of your CHOW, you can email PBS OASIS accounts to get the appropriate CHOW name. Again, that email is included at the end of the presentation. There's also a radio button on the access form to select your role for either non-approver or ordering official. The role selection and the 3 signatures are all required fields for OASIS access. We are pausing new user accounts for the next 2 weeks to finish the reconfiguration implementation, so new users can submit the forms, but any new account creations are on hold for approximately the next 2 weeks. Next slide, please. Users must log in every 90 days or the account will be deactivated. That process is the same as before, where users can email PBS OASIS accounts and request reactivation, which is a fairly quick process. If you happen to become inactive, there is no longer an issue of being able to view an OA that was routed for approval while you were inactive. The workflow is changed and OAs are no longer routed based on a specific contact, but instead by AB code. That means all users can view the OA approval form even if they become active after the OA approval was sent by GSA. but we'll talk more about the OA approval forms and that process in the upcoming demo. Not all users will appear on the OA anymore either. We're working to add all the ordering officials to the contact details section of the OA, but non-approvers will not be displayed on the OA. The good news is, even if you don't see yourself listed as a contact on the OA, you're still able to view all the OAs due to the change I mentioned earlier. So the only thing that's impacted by being inactive, aside from not having access to OASIS, is that you won't receive email notifications. And we'll talk more about the notifications after the upcoming demos. There's also an active user query, which was added to the portal on the left side of your OASIS homepage. This allows you to view all the users for your AB code directly in OASIS. So if someone in your agency needs to review an OA for approval, but they're not on the active user query, they'll need to reach out to have their account reactivated. Next slide, please. If you're familiar with OASIS, you've worked with the queries and you've worked with the portal already. But with this reconfiguration launch, they're both new and improved. So you'll want to pay attention to this first demo because there have been some big changes you'll want to see.
Welcome to Customer Portal Overview Training. This training is part of a series developed specifically for customers in OASIS. In this module, we'll review your Customer Portal homepage. Before we start, it is important to note that Google Chrome is the preferred browser for OASIS. Also, when using OASIS, you'll note that it opens separate windows to display information. So be sure to turn off any pop-up blockers in your browser. Let's get started. The Customer Portal is your central hub in OASIS. This is the page that will open when you log onto the system. It is customized to show you all the records associated with your agency AB code or codes. At the top of the page is the security notation. You can collapse this message once you've read it by clicking the minus sign in the upper left corner of the section. Each subsequent section can also be collapsed or expanded as needed. The main part of the homepage is divided into 3 sections: approval requests, OAs and locations, and customer requests. The approval request section deals with customer review and approval process and contains 4 different queries. First is the OAs needing approval link. These are pending OAs the GSA has sent to your agency for approval. This link is viewable for everyone in your agency and displays OAs needing your agency's action. The next 2 links are for request clarifications. These are OAs under agency review that needed additional information from GSA. The queries are broken into 2 groups. Those in progress are awaiting GSA responses. Those under request clarification completed have received a response from GSA. Finally, there's a list of OAs that were recently rejected by your agency in the last 30 days. We walk through the approval request section in great detail in the How to Approve or Reject an OA in OASIS training module. The OAs and locations section include 3 separate queries. The OA query allows you to view all of your agency's active OAs. An active OA is one that is currently billing or a draft OA that has reached the customer review stage. Scenario plans contain access to your own floor plans. Please note that these are plans created since OASIS Go Live in August of 2023 and that lease plans are not included. Finally, Compare OA versions allows a user to look at 2 different versions of the same OA side by side. This comparison feature can be helpful when reviewing a modified OA for approval. Each of these queries are covered in greater detail in later modules. The final section is the customer request section. Within this section, you can submit billing questions and releases of space, as well as track in-progress requests and those recently completed. Please see the Submit a Billing Question or Release of Space module for more information on these processes. The left panel of your customer portal has a few helpful queries to manage your portfolio. Reminders include links to a query showing all leased OAs expiring in the next 18 months, a query of owned OAs where your agency is vacating in the next 18 months, and a query listing all customer reviews. In the related section, you'll find a link to all OAs, all scenario plans, all active users, and all customer requests. The All OAs link includes not just active OAs, but those that have closed as well. Although please note, OASIS does not contain prior system information. OAs that closed before 2023 will not be included. The All Active Users will provide the names of your agency OASIS users that have an active account in good standing. Users are automatically deactivated every 90 days if they have not accessed OASIS during that time period. If a user becomes inactive, you can email PBS OASIS accounts at gsa.gov to be quickly reactivated. The All Customer Requests will include requests your agency has submitted in the past. Clicking on any of the links will open the query for that subject. From there, you can review and export data, select OAs to review further, or submit a request. Please continue to the Query Overview module for information on using the links. Thank you. Welcome to OASIS Query Overview Training. This training is part of a series developed specifically for customers in OASIS. This section will cover working with queries found on your customer portal. Please ensure you view the customer portal module first for an explanation of the different queries available. All queries on your customer portal function the same way. For our training, we'll be concentrating on the OAS query located in the center of your portal. This query shows all of the OAs that are currently billing or drafts that have reached the customer review stage. To open a query, you click on the link from your customer portal. I'm now viewing the OA query for my agency AB code, which is the GSA PBS AB code for our training examples. Your list will display all the OAs for your agency. If you have multiple AB codes, you'll see all the data in this one query. I'm able to do a few different things with this list. First, I can adjust the number of search results per page by clicking on the caret at the bottom of the list next to the items per page. I can select up to 1,000 rows on this table. Second, I can export the entire list into an Excel workbook by clicking on the downward arrow in the right corner. An Excel file will be created with a list of all of these OAs. Everything within the list, including things on later pages, will be included in the download. If I've filtered this list first, then only the filtered results will appear in the document. Third, I can search for specific records by entering the information in the search boxes above. I can enter a specific OA or location number, or I can enter part of that number and search. For example, continuing with the search function, I can filter down the results to help me locate a record or to export records that meet a specific criteria. For example, let's say I'm trying to find a leased OA in Missouri. I start by entering Missouri in state, but I still have too many results. So next, under OA type, I can enter leased. There it is. When I'm done, I can clear all the filters to get the full results again. I can also manipulate the data display by sorting the information separately or by moving or removing columns altogether. To sort, I click on the column heading, which sorts in ascending order. If I want to reverse it, I click it again, and it will switch to descending order. To move columns and rearrange them, simply drag and drop them. For example, I can move the OA number next to the location code. If I wanted to delete a column, I can click the hamburger at the top of each column and completely remove any column by unchecking them from this pop-up. For example, let's say we wanted to remove GSA status and a B code. We just check the box and they're gone. I can also change the column width to help view information as needed. These changes are not permanent. Once I close the query and reopen it, the list will revert back to the default display. So have no fear if you accidentally delete a column or sort it incorrectly. Selecting the caret to the left of each OA will provide a snapshot of an OA sent for the customer approval. Here's an example. Clicking on the document and then clicking Open would download the document as a PDF for me to view. Each of the queries on the customer portal will work the same way and allow the same level of customization to aid you in searching, opening, and exporting records. This concludes our training on how to use and customize the query list in OASIS. Please view the OA Overview module for a detailed walkthrough of the OA record. Thank you.
Okay, and before we dive into questions, I wanted to mention that the demos from today are included in our YouTube OASIS playlist, and those can be found on our PBS OASIS site, which is also linked at the end of the presentation. So we'll open it up for a few minutes for questions on any of the topics that you heard about already and anything from the demos that you just saw.
We normally do these in the afternoon and the questions are very active. So maybe a morning session means it's going to be a little quieter.
Deanne and
we have
Marissa, I do
one-
see there is a question that did come in. It came in via the chat, but it's relevant to the demo we just saw. And Charles wants to know if you can rearrange the columns and save that order for future uses. So do customers have any control over how that screen is set up?
You can rearrange them. And you do that by just kind of clicking on one of the columns and dragging it where you would like it. It will not save though. So each time that you kind of go in and clear that cache, it'll come back and default to the system. One way to kind of get around that is to keep the query open as you run the portals. As long as you have the system up, those will stay in place. All right, here's some other questions we have coming in. The first one says, do we have to re-register for OASIS? And the answer is no. If you had an account prior to the reconfiguration, that account stayed as is. We did go out to every agency's chow and have them confirm that they wanted their folks to stay as ordering officials, or if some of those people should be converted to the new non-approver role. We made those changes. We also added some new users at that time. If your account has gone inactive though, because you did not log on within 90 days, you will need to send an email to the PBS OASIS accounts to have that reactivated. That is a system security issue that is out of the project team's hands. So each time you become inactive, you have to do a formal request to get that reinstated. All right. The next question, Arissa, maybe if you want to take it, can I select multiple OAs and export them to a PDF?
You can select as well you'd have to select the OAs as individual OAs, but you can export if you wanted to see everything in Excel. But for a PDF, it does have to be one by one.
And will there be downloadable full OA documents? I think Arissa kind of just answered that a little bit, and we will demo that here in a little bit in a later presentation. And just a note, if anyone is wondering kind of for why we're kind of doing the recordings, since this is a live training, just like live TV, you kind of have to prepare for everything. And the system can sometimes be a little bit slow, especially when we're trying to do it and also be in a Zoom session. So we recorded all of these trainings and demos so that we could kind of hit play and watch them in real time and then answer questions. So we will kind of get to those. And if there's any questions that you have that we do not have a recording for, we will attempt to demo that live today as well. Arissa, can everyone with access to a specific AB code see all the OAs for that AB code?
They can, as long as you have access for a specific AB code, you can view all of those OAs that the supervisor and Chow have granted access from your user access form.
Here's a great question for me personally. Will we receive a notice as we approach the end of 90 days? I wish we could do that. I personally wish I could have that for all the systems that I am signed up for, but unfortunately that feature does not exist with our IT group at this time. For external users, it is something that we are exploring to see if that is a future enhancement we can make. But at this time, we just kind of suggest as a best practice, you set that calendar invite for every 80 days for yourself to just kind of mentally log into the system if you had no reason to log in the past 3 months. All right. What is the process, Arissa, to change a user role from non-approver to ordering official if it's needed?
To change your role now, we have the new user access form that we demoed. Well, showed a part of the screenshot from that. It is found on the PBS OASIS site, which we'll go over again at the end of the presentation. But to change your role, you have to go through the process to update the user access form and get a supervisor and Chow signature, and then send that into PBS OASIS accounts so your role can be changed.
And we have a few more questions. We're kind of at the end of this first break. We will get to all of these questions at the end with the general session if we don't do it here, but we do want to keep moving. But we got one great question, which I think is a good preview for the next 2 videos. It's as a non-approver, being unable to approve or reject OAs, if comments or changes are needed, do we have the ability to annotate this on the OA and get it back to GSA without approval and rejection? And you do. We're very excited about that feature. So in these next 2 videos here, we'll kind of walk through a demo of the new approval form that you will see. All the information that'll be on that form where you can kind of click to get further records. And then we'll walk through how to actually request clarification, which is how you would do that, or to approve or reject an OA. So with that, take it away, Kenny, with the videos.
Welcome to the How to Approve or Reject OAs in OASIS customer module. This training is part of a series of modules developed specifically for customers in OASIS. In this video, we'll show you how to find and manage your OA approvals. For information on reviewing your OA record, please see the OA Overview module. When GSA sends you an OA, they are basing the information off a pending award, and it's crucial the OA is reviewed timely to keep the project on schedule and honor the bids received. We ask that agencies complete their OA review in 3 weeks, including any clarifications they need from GSA. This ensures we stay on schedule. Now let's walk through how to review an OA approval. Starting from the OASIS customer portal, an OA that requires your review will show up in the OAs Needing Approval query right here. I click on the query title, and this opens my list of OAs awaiting my agency approval. This section is viewable by every user with OASIS access in your agency, and any user can click on the approval form to start the review of the OA. This query displays the OA number, AB code, location name, city, state, and region, the occupancy right, the lease number if applicable, the modified date and time, a reviewer field, the reason for the change, and the effective date of the change. You are able to customize this query to move fields, sort, filter, remove columns, or adjust the width of columns. Please see the Working with Queries training for detailed information on customizing these lists. I also want to call your attention to the column for Reviewer. This box is for you as a customer user to enter information that would assist in your agency's internal review. For example, I might type my name in this box to show that I'm currently taking the lead on reviewing this OA, so another colleague doesn't start duplicating my work. To start my review of an OA, I click on the line for the OA I want to view, and that opens the OA approval form. This form has several sections. Starting from the very top, you can see Save, Approve, and Reject buttons. This is where ordering officials can choose to approve or reject the OA. Please note, someone with the non-approver customer role will not see the Approve or Reject button. The top section on the left is the General section and contains the following fields. Transmittal reason. This is the reason the OA was sent for your review. This is a drop-down that GSA completes, and if there are multiple reasons for an OA approval, GSA will select the choice that best describes the situation. The effective date of the change. This is the date the proposed OA change should occur. This may be a date in the past if the action is late, or it may be a date in the future if the OA is for a new space project or change in rent. The effective date of the change should not be confused with the OA commencement date. The OA commencement date is the date the OA first started, or a date migrated from our previous OA tool. It is not updated after billing starts. This also should not be confused with payment line effective dates. GSA must use a billing adjustment to bill for past due items, and a payment schedule effective date may be for the current month, while the effective date is in the past. The submitted by and submitted date fields tell you who sent this OA approval for your review and when. This next section will be blank when you first open the form. It will be automatically completed once your agency has approved or rejected this OA. The section will also show who approved or rejected the OA, when and what their decision was, and the reason for any rejection if applicable. The next section of the form is the OA section. There's a hyperlink here to open your OA record or the OA summary report. Clicking on those links will open that record in a separate window. The section also provides the location code and name where the OA is located. The next section on our form is the reviewer section. This is where a customer reviewer would enter that quick note to help aid our internal review process. In my example, this is where I would type my name to indicate that I'm reviewing this OA. Conversely, I could type someone else's name if I was ready for them to start their review, and that would appear in the query. There is no restriction on how an agency decides to use this field, and each agency should discuss their own internal preference. Ensure you hit save after you enter information into this box. This section also allows me to add internal notes on my review. These notes are intended to help your agency's review, and they do not become part of the OA official file. They cannot be used to communicate information to GSA. You might use this section to let the next agency reviewer know information specific to your work on the review, or what your agency personnel counts are for when they approve the OA. Notes are added by clicking the Add button, which opens a pop-up for you to type your internal notes. These cannot be edited after they are added to the approval form. The final section on my form is where I request clarification from GSA. This is used if you aren't sure whether this OA should be approved or not and need to ask GSA a quick question. We have more information on the request clarification feature in part 2. This concludes our review of the OA approval form. In part 2, we'll walk through 3 different scenarios a customer might encounter when reviewing an OA. Thank you for listening. Welcome to the How to Approve or Reject OAs in OASIS Customer Module Part 2. This training is part of a series of modules developed specifically for customers in OASIS. In this video, we'll show you how to seek clarification and approve or reject your OA. Please review Part 1 of the Approve or Reject OAs module before beginning this video. To start the review of our OA, we click the OAs Needing Approval link, select the OA we wish to view, and click on that to open our approval form. For scenario 1, let's assume that you've opened the OA record from the hyperlink, reviewed all the information, and everything looks good. You're ready to approve the OA. From the top of this approval form, I click Approve. This opens another pop-up window. The window contains an important message outlining what your approval means and includes sections to enter the total personnel for this assignment, broken out by employees, contractors, and teleworking individuals. This information is required by O&B, but GSA does not enter, edit, or verify the information. The form also includes 3 customer identifiers. These are completely discretionary fields and will appear on the OA queries as a way to search, sort, and filter OAs that are specific to your agency. It's important to note that once entered and submitted, they cannot be edited until the OA needs another approval. For our example here, I'll enter a 1 for each employee category and enter 1 customer identifier. I click Submit as the final step to send my OA back to GSA as approved. Had I clicked the X on this pop-up, the pop-up would close and the OA would remain within my agency. Now that I've approved my OA, GSA can proceed with my space acquisition project. The OA will remain in a customer approved status until it's ready to bill. For our next training scenario, let's assume that unfortunately we cannot agree to the OA under these terms and conditions, so we need to reject the request. Remember, the OA is being sent to reflect the negotiated terms of the award. If we don't agree with these terms, the space acquisition is in jeopardy. I start this training scenario by selecting a new OA from the OAs Needing Approval link on our customer portal. After completing the review and finding it unacceptable, I click the Reject button. A new pop-up opens. On my new pop-up, I'll enter the rejection reason in the open text box to explain to GSA why I cannot move forward with this OA. This is a required field. Then I'll click Submit. This OA is now in a rejected status, and the GSA region will reach out to discuss next steps. I can find all OAs that have been recently rejected in this query on my customer portal. For our third and final scenario, let's use the request clarification feature. While only ordering officials could approve or reject an OA, both ordering officials and non-approvers have the ability to request clarification. From the OAs needing approval link, I'll select another OA. After reviewing the OA using the hyperlinks, I'm a little confused. We told GSA we needed 5 parking spaces to go with our request, but I don't see any on the Payments tab of the OA record. So on the approval form, scroll down to the Request Clarification section. Click Add to enter a new question, and a pop-up opens. The top will display general information such as the approval form number. My name and the date will default to the customer question section once I click Submit. In the open text field, I'll enter my question on this OA. Importantly, this field will remain editable while the question is with GSA. So if necessary, you or another user in your agency could add additional details or ask a second question here. This will remain editable until GSA responds to the request. Once I'm through typing up my question, I click on Submit, and the question is routed to GSA. The OA approval also remains open for others in the agency to open the approval, review the OA, and even approve or reject it. For example, if another agency user, Ken, sees my clarification question to GSA about the 5 parking spaces and reminds me we no longer have a need for those spaces, I can approve the OA by selecting the Approve button, even though I have an outstanding clarification with GSA. This action would cancel the request clarification and move the OA to a customer approved status. While it's in this request clarification stage, I can review the request in my customer portal now. Under Request Clarification Pending. While it's in this state, I can continue to edit it. GSA can also enter comments as well. For example, they may type, "This question requires additional research. I will respond as soon as we contact the lessor on Monday." That way you understand that GSA has seen the question and know an approximate timeline for response. Once GSA responds, the request will move to Request Clarification Completed. This whole time, my OA also continued to show in the OA's Needing Approval query. This concludes this module on approving or rejecting an OA. Thanks for tuning in, and don't miss the remaining OASIS training videos for customers. Thank you.
All right. So I did see a couple comments that the screen for some folks was kind of blurry and it kept changing in size. Not sure what happened there, if it was a Zoom issue or an individual internet speed issue, but all the recordings are on our PBS OASIS external site, and you can click on those and view them again. That it also applies if you want to go back and kind of see them slower or in more detail as you walk through your own approval. We kept all videos to 7 minutes or shorter so that they would be very fast watches. So in addition to what we kind of walked through with the approvals, we also wanted to note that we made changes to the notification emails that you get. These emails shouldn't be confused with the notification tab that appears on your OA record, or the previous notification in-app thing that would used to show up on your portal. So for the customer reconfiguration, you as an ordering official will receive an email telling you that you have an action for you to review in the following 3 scenarios. If an OA is sent to your agency and is ready for you to take a look at, if the OA has been rejected by anyone in your agency, or if someone in your agency did a request for clarification, but GSA has now completed and responded to that. In all three scenarios, ordering officials on the OA will get an email. We have tested this in production with some of our customers, and they were able to confirm that they were receiving these emails. However, we know that with 430 unique agencies, we may have some firewall issues out there that prevent you from personally receiving these. If your entire agency is not receiving them, this may be a firewall issue, and our only kind of technical solution is for you to work with your individual local IT support in your agency to see if these can be put on an allowed list, or if there's some technical solution for them to be able to send these emails. If you are the only one not getting these emails out of your group of ordering official, there could be a few different things at play. First, again, we would encourage you to check your junk or your filters if you've somehow set up a filter for OASIS emails. The second issue would be that we will not send emails if your account is currently deactivated because you have logged out. So the first troubleshooting thing would be for you to go into OASIS and see if you can get in. And if you cannot, then you would email the PBS OASIS accounts. And once your account was reactivated, you would begin to receive emails again. And then the final thing, if you try that and you're able to get in, would be to look at the individual OA record. It will only send emails to those folks that are listed as contacts of the OA. You will still be able to view the OA. You'll still see it in your pending OA review queue. You'll be able to take all the same actions. The only thing is that email. So if you notice that you or a coworker who's an ordering official is missing from that contact, you can send an email to the PBS OASIS inbox, and we can do a quick cleanup to push you back onto all of those OAs, or maybe you were inactivated when it was created. And we can get you added so that you get those notifications again. Non-approvers at this time will not get email notifications. So you'll need an internal process if you have non-approvers that you want to forward the email to, or maybe log in every few days to see if you have pending actions. We're also looking further at notifications, because I saw we got a question during the last questions segment about other email notifications that used to be sent, or in-app notifications. We are looking at the release of space notification emails. That'll happen in the next few releases as we work on that process. And then we're going to do a relook at all of our notification emails just to make sure that we're hitting the appropriate ones. But these three are the ones that we've kind of set in stone for the approval reconfiguration. All right. So I think we're ready for our next break. We're going to take a little bit longer because we know we threw a lot of really important information at you guys on approving OAs. So let's jump into the question and answer pod. All right. So we have a question about can a non-approver customize their portal view to see only the OAs they're responsible for? So if they have certain states, or they've divvied up the work. So no, and this is true for ordering officials as well. That queue of pending OAs is based on your AB code. There's no way to individually kind of do a permanent sort or filter so that you only get certain ones. You can, however, search that portal if you want to search it for certain GSA regions or for states. There is a state field, or you can simply type A and then the state abbreviation in the OA and hit enter, and it'll only return those for that state. So there are ways that you can kind of customize the review of that. But that query gives maximum flexibility so that as an agency, you can kind of pop in and pick the ones that you are responsible for. With that being said, when we launched, we did see a couple of folks that rejected OAs and said, oh, this isn't mine. Just keep in mind, you're rejecting it on behalf of the entire agency. So that's kind of a general, shared mailbox or shared query. So if it's not yours, you can move past it, or you can go in and add whoever is responsible to that reviewer query to kind of get them moving on their review or to kind of file that. But please don't reject it if it's not for you, because that is removing it from all of your coworker queries. All right, let's see. Here's a good question, Arissa. How does an OA get terminated in OASIS, and who can terminate it?
So in OASIS, with the reconfiguration, everyone still has the ability to submit a request. So that's on the portal page. That's non-approvers and ordering officials. So you can select the release of space option in the request, and then that goes to GSA and starts the process to terminate the OA. Dan, did you have anything else to add to that one?
No, that was a good answer. The OA would be terminated because it expired or because you did a release of space. GSA would take the action, but if you have questions or need to trigger that, you can definitely follow through with the individual region. And here's another good question. This is something that Arissa personally worked on. Can I see a list of everyone in my agency who has an OASIS account?
Yes, actually, that active users in my organization is a great query to show you all of the users, and it doesn't have the role that they are, but it does show you if they're active, and then everyone who is associated with that AB code for your organization. So that's a quick reference to kind of to stop there, and also will show you if you're expecting to see someone on that list who isn't they're inactive and they would need to get that account reactivated.
All right. We got some feedback that some folks would rather not receive emails for their agency. Unfortunately, it is not something that we can turn on and off, but you can set up filters in your inbox if you'd like to block those or put them in a file folder so that it alerts you if only those that have certain characteristics come into your inbox. If we had, I think they mean ordering official access before, do we automatically have access now as a non-approver? So if you were previously an ordering official and your agency kept you as an ordering official, you have the maximum rights and can do everything, and you maintain those rights. If your agency asks to move you to a non-approver role, you will still have access to all of those OAs. You'll still be able to view and kind of walk through all the reviewing and questions that we just walked through, but you would not be able to approve or reject a new OA approval that came in. That would be the only difference. And the system will still show if you previously were the one who approved an OA, we will still see that in the system, so that didn't get lost either. All right. So we have a question from someone that said, the previous reconfiguration, I would receive the actual OA in PDF for review. Now I receive a link to access OASIS to review the OA. So it is true that the PDF is inside OASIS. So when you would go into that OA's needing approval and you click on the OA summary report, that's how you get the PDF. So that's just kind of a control feature that was put into place so that the most recent PDF was sent to you, and that if a request was rejected and a new PDF was created, you would have access to the newest and greatest. So we didn't have folks reviewing older versions of the PDF. All right. So approver, let's see. I think we're kind of moving through. So we have about 5 more minutes for questions about approvals. If we have any new ones, go ahead and type them in.
Again, there's
Otherwise,
a couple of questions that are floating around in the chat. I'm sorry, but just to remind folks, it's easier for Deanne to keep track of them if they all go into the Q&A pod rather than that chat pod. But we did have one in here that asked, can a request be canceled?
it can. So is this so that we have the customer request where you send us something like submitting a billing question or a release of space. Those can be, we're going to be working on the release of space next. So there might be a few changes and tweaks coming to that process in August. If it is a request for clarification, and you ask a question and then someone walks over and says, hey, you know, Deanne, I think you've got this confused. You know, we're talking about the building in Missouri, not Kansas. You can go into the request for clarification and you can edit it directly. You can delete it and say, never mind, or sorry, you know, looked at the wrong thing. And that will cancel that, or that will effectively tell GSA you no longer have a request for clarification, and you would still be able to approve or reject that OA. The other thing I just kind of wanted to call out, since we have a minute or two while we're waiting for questions, within the demo, we kind of showed you the new box where you can make customer notes. That is separate from request clarification. So those customer internal notes, those are purely up to you as an agency if you want to use them or how you use them. It's not to document information in the OA where you would say, you know, actually we don't want it to be non-cancelable or what, you know, whatever the issue is. But they are ways that you can communicate the review. So if you're reviewing things and maybe you add certain information that is just internal for your agency, we can review it. We have form, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can use that note section to put that note on there so that if another person does need to look at the OA, they have all that information in the same place. We got a lot of questions previously about the person who's hitting the approve button maybe doesn't know our employee count. How can we get that to them, or how can we save that note section would be the perfect opportunity to say, I've reviewed it. Here's the personnel counts for us. And then when the ordering official takes it, they'll have all that information. We just note that they are internal to your agency. GSA will not be purposely going to view them. But I do want to put out the disclaimer that they are open to both agencies. So, you know, keep that in mind. If you're adding some sensitive information, it will become, you know, part of the record and will be saved out there. If you have a few choice words for GSA, perhaps that is not the right place to put it, because that will become part of the official system record, and that can be viewed by others. All right. Okay, so here's a good question. After utilizing the request for clarification, if an OA is updated, will OASIS automatically reject and file the now old OA and produce an updated OA? So it's a little bit more nuanced than that, but effectively GSA does now have the ability, if we find that you request clarification and say, you know, this was supposed to have 10,000 square feet, you accidentally typed 100,000. If GSA sees that and says, oops, yep, we can go ahead and reject that OA. So it pulls it back out of your agency queue, puts it back with us. We can correct that typo and then resend it for approval. So you would all see a rejection. It would show up in your recently rejected OA queue. As a GSA user, we would add a comment that says rejection reason, you know, GSA must correct a typo. And then it would come back to you. And in that same way, you would get a new OA PDF. You would get a new OA approval form record, and then you could kind of redo that process and then approve the one that is 100% accurate and correct. So you may see that kind of feature as we go through and make those clarifications. So that's an excellent question. All right, and I think we're at time for our question and answer. So let's go to the next slide, Kenny. All right. So now that we've kind of gone through the approval queue and looking at how you can approve the OAs, review them, move them through your agency review, we also wanted to give a quick overview of a frequently asked question on how do I see those questions or those approvals. So on each OA record, you will be able to review the approval or the rejection. So on the OA record, when you open it and navigate to the notification tab, the upper section is going to show you all of the OAs that we have sent to you, or the times that we have sent to you a request to approve the OA. If you've approved or rejected it, it will show up at the top. And if we've had to send it a few times, like in that example, where we had a typo, you would see both the rejection where we pulled it back and the subsequent approval where we resent it. If we have a previous approval that was sent, if you remember the old section where it would list all of your ordering officials and it would say pending or approved by other, those that happened in the last 10 months are still on the record. We just moved them to the bottom and called them an archive section. Then on the notes and documents tab, you'll be able to open OA summary PDF and see the exact OA that was approved. It will have your approval information at the bottom, and you can save that, email that, print that for whatever your personal agency file or audit needs are. So on the next slide. All right. On the OA summary report, that PDF report, we also had 2 new fields that we added based on some customer feedback. The first is a pending end date. These are on the financial rate lines. So when you have a rate line that is currently billing, it will show you the effective and expiration date of that rate. And then if we are trying to end that rate early for some reason, you would also see the pending end date. So that would be a way to say, we were going to be billing you this rate through 2025. We're actually trying to stop that rate in June. I know in the past it looked a little confusing where it looked like we had duplicate lines and you had to go into the OA record itself. So we put that on the document. And then we also added statuses for each of the billing lines so that you can see whether, this one is scheduled and billing or ready to be billed if it was a future rate, or if it's a pending line. And these come in handy on those modifications to OAs that are currently billing. So you're in the space, you've been billed for the space, maybe you've been in there 10 years, GSA is making a change. So you can see this is what's currently billing and we'll bill this month and next month if no action is taken. And then here's the pending line that we would like to change. And on our next slide here, we have a short little video that walks through that.
Let's look at a couple of examples here. First, we'll view the approval record in the OA. I have an OA that I approved this morning, and I want to go in and see the record. To get there, I go to OAs, enter my OA number, and then click on this line to open the record. I can see on this screen that the GSA status is now customer approved. Navigating to the Notifications tab, I can see the customer approval section has an entry for myself. The OA was sent to me yesterday for approval, and I approved it today. Clicking on this line would open my approval document that we demoed in the last section. I want to look at my OA document though. So I go to Notes and Documents. And here I see 2 separate documents. One is called the post-approval and one is called the pre-approval. A document is created each time GSA sends you an OA for your approval. The document is labeled as pre-approval OA and provides the date and the time, which is in GMT. If you reject a request, you will still see the pre-approval document here. This way, each separate document can be referenced to see the exact terms and conditions when GSA sent you the OA. Viewing each of these documents will allow you to see what changed over time. Here we just have one pre-approval because the OA was only sent to me for review once and I approved it. The second document here is the post-approval. This gets generated when a customer hits approve. Clicking on this will open the document. I previously downloaded it, so we'll open it here. Scrolling to the bottom of this OA, I see the approval information. This contains the OA number and version, who approved it, and what date and time it was approved. This particular OA also has an example of the pending end date that we wanted to discuss. In this OA situation, GSA has a shell rate that they would like to change midterm. So the OA is currently billing a shell rate of $30.98 through March of 2025. The line here is in a status of scheduled. This means it's pending, or it's billing and finalized. There's also a pending end date here now of June 30th of 2024. This means that the OA is currently billing $30.98 and will continue to bill that until it's finalized. Then the rate will end and the end date will be updated to June 30th. A new shell line is also present here for $32.63. The status of this one is pending. This means it's a proposed new line, but it has not been approved for billing yet. Looking at these two lines together, I can see that GSA would like to stop billing me $30.98 at the end of June and replace it with this charge of $32.63. You may also notice that the OA document has been slightly changed to improve readability. This concludes the demo of the OA summary document and the OA notifications. Thank you.
All right, at this point, we were going to open up for general questions on everything. I'll be honest, based on our last CES sessions and our customer meetings, we were expecting a lot more questions. So please throw any questions that you have at us for OASIS or otherwise, or we can just take it that maybe the information now is so simple and so streamlined that everybody kind of gets it and we have no questions. So feel free to disabuse us of that notion as well. While we wait for any more to come in, I do see a few different comments and questions about non-approvers not getting those notification emails. That's purely a result of the system not having them as contacts. That's something we can look at for a future release. But in the meantime, that might just be an issue where non-approvers go in routinely. If you're a high volume agency, if you're not, it might be one where you set up an internal process for ordering officials to forward those emails in the interim until we can look at a solution. All right. I see one question about kind of a unique situation. Audra, Scott, about your particular agency. I can respond to you kind of separately on that because I think we do have a fairly unique workaround for you all. All right. Andrea, anything coming in?
A question in the chat about a new, if you're a newly minted OASIS user that had just been approved by your agency and your access has been granted, like what's the first email or intro that you'll get to say, hi, welcome, you're now a new user, and here are the first steps for you to go about accessing the system. What would a newly minted OASIS user see from the, would they receive something from the tool, from OASIS? Or what would that communication look like?
You do get a welcome email that gives you the link and lets you know that your access has been granted. So if you did not get that, I would reach out to and you're not able to access OASIS at the oasis.gsa.gov, then you can email PBS OASIS accounts to check on the status of your account.
And I will just clarify one quick thing. The very large ad that we just did over this past weekend that introduced new users, those did not generate personal emails because they did not go through the normal startup process. So if you were one of the very, recently added users, you can log on to oasis.gsa.gov, like Arissa said, and you should have access. And then all the training material on our site, which we'll share again here in a minute. All right, here's a question that we get a few different times. On the OA summary page, is there a way GSA can provide the PBS fee calculated rather than just the percentage? A grand total would be very useful. I don't disagree that would be very useful. The issue we have with providing a set amount is you'll notice the rates that you have, almost none of them have the same expiration date. So you have operating rates that are good through your CPI period. You have shell rates that might be good for 5, 10, 15 years. You have TI that might be dropping off at different times. You have parking that also may be at a different effective expiration date. Because of that, we can give you the PBS fee amount for today. We can tell you what it will be for your next build month, but we cannot give you the amount that it will be for your entire occupancy because it is a percentage that depends wholly on what we are billing each month. So when that operating cost escalates, that amount would then be out of date. We did go back and forth in the design whether we should give an amount that says as of this one date, here's a snapshot of what that would be. But the customer feedback on that with our focus groups was not positive. So that's why we landed on the percentage, and the same for the annual amounts, because we've gone away from the 10 or 15 or 20 page OAs where you had duplicate pages for each fiscal year. Because we have those conflicting expiration dates, there is no way to kind of give you a roll-up grand summary of that. We are looking at ways to improve that in the future, but that's kind of why we landed on the design that we did. Here's a question about turning back space in OA, so doing a release of space. It's 3 of them at the end of the OA. What sort of notification will we receive? So the part of that is kind of what we discussed on when you do the release of space within the system, you will get notified. This one has been approved. This one's pending. This one's awaiting move out. This one has been rejected if you cannot give back the space for some reason. That will be in the system. We are working on some of those email notifications because they weren't capturing all of the scenarios, and release of space is an internal process we're going to start working on in a few releases. If you have any specific questions about whether one has been approved or whether it's pending, you can submit a billing question in OASIS or reach out directly to your OA contact for that one. All right, I'm seeing some more questions. Let's see. Oh, here's a good question. There have been issues where the rentable square feet in OASIS does not match what's on Rent on the Web. Has the issue been brought to OASIS? So there's a couple of different issues going on with square footage. The OASIS record has square footage in 2 separate tabs. One is the location tab and one is the payment tab. The payment tab is the amount that should be appearing on your Rent on the Web bill. If the payments are broken out into a few different blocks of space. When those roll up, you may see some very slight rounding differences. If you had TFC for, 100.3 square feet and general space for 100.7, it might not round up to on the row bill as 201. It might have some variance in that. But in general, if it is a direct one line, it should be showing on row as one line. If you have instances where that doesn't happen, please send those to the PBS OASIS box and we can dig into those. The other tab though on the OA is the location tab. And the location tab shows your measured assigned square footage. And there are cases for very valid reasons where that would not be the same as your build square foot. One of the prime ones is remeasurement. So when you first move in and we measure your space and we say this is 1,000 square feet, that's what we put into the bill and that's what we bill based on. If we come back the next year and have changed our measurement guidelines or do a walkthrough of your space and use the lasers and measure your space and say this is actually 1,005 square feet, we are not going to change your rent. We will, though, update it to show this space is actually 1,005 square feet. So that would be an instance where you would see a variance of my OA location says I have 1,005 square feet. My payment says I have 1,000 square feet. That would be what we would consider a true accurate variance, and one that we would keep separated until we did the SDM remeasurement. So hopefully that answered the questions. Like I said, if you're seeing any other really specific ones, send it into the PBS OASIS box and we'll take a look at that from a system perspective. All right. I don't know, Marissa, if you had a chance to see.
I had seen one question. Jennifer had asked about her access. Excuse me. OASIS does work best in Chrome, but it should work on all platforms. So I would try it in Chrome and see, but after the training, I will also check into your account and reach out to you directly so we can troubleshoot what's going on there.
And here's a good question that just came in about RU factors. I know that's a frequently asked question. Why did our RU factors change in October of 2023 from the old OA to the new? So there were two different things going on. Well, three different things I should say going on. The first was converting to a 2 decimal RU factor. We had systems that use 9. We had systems that use 7, 5. We went to 2. So when we did that, there were some slight roundings. Again, it depended on how big your OA was. If you are a 1,000,000 square foot OA, a slight rounding looks a little bit different than if you are a 200 square foot office. But there were some slight rounding differences. The second thing that we did in October of 2023 was convert joint use away from a separate charged line into part of the building common. When that occurred, we updated our RU factors so that the square footage stayed the same, but it moved out of your joint use line and moved into your rentable square footage line. Then we had a third thing that was happening at the same time. When we made that change, PBS had not done a systemic update of our RU factors in several years, or maybe almost a decade. And very similar to what I just explained on the other question, when our RU factors changed, we did not change your bills because we were holding them for the SDM remeasurement process. And we don't want to constantly change your bill because someone remeasured a bathroom on the 3rd floor. In October, with the transition and the joint use change, we did align RU factors again. So if your RU factor had gotten misaligned in the previous years, you would have seen a correction that occurred in October to bring it back into line. Most of these were very small blips for agencies. They had 100.2 square feet and suddenly they had 100.9. There were a handful of locations where someone had gotten very misaligned. And so their change was a little bit more noticeable. The only thing we can say on that is you had been getting a break for several years, and now you kind of were brought back into alignment. I will also add that this was a one-time change. GSA will not be doing a similar change this fiscal year or in the future. You'll only be updated when you make a space change to your individual space, or if your building goes through a formal full remeasurement where you get the 2 years to budget and make those changes. All right, here is a great question. Arissa, I'll throw to you. How can agencies, or who can agencies contact to provide input or suggestions for OASIS going forward, future enhancements, fixes to make it more friendly for agencies?
We actually have a slide coming up on kind of where to direct questions, so hopefully that will be useful to you as well. But for general enhancements, you can send that to the PBS OASIS inbox. So that email address is pbsoasis@gsa.gov.
And someone also followed up on that and said, how can we join GSA's focus or beta testing groups? Send it right where Arissa said. We're always happy to have some help there, especially if you could also tell us kind of what your expectations are for time commitment. We have some things where we're like, hey, can someone take a quick, look at this? It might take a couple of hours, or can someone attend a focus group for an hour? And then we have some that we're a little bit more involved where we say, hey, let's jump on a call and have you try to click on things and document what you find. So let us know your availability on that. We'll take either, but that would help. I got a question about, I think with that square footage change, a specific ask. I would say let's send that away to the PBS OASIS box and we can dig into that one specifically. That seems like a big change, but we might have had a lot of different stuff going on, depending on what the building is. All right. Let's see. Trying to scroll through, sorry. All right. Let's do a quick demo. I know someone said they couldn't find the OA summary page, so let's go ahead and do a quick demo of that if we can. Well, I may not have. I have timed out. All right. So let me go ahead and try to share. Kenny, I think you have to stop sharing for me to be able to. And then we'll give this a try to see if folks can see it. And if not, we'll follow up. So I am in test as that GSA customer again. So I have the same views that other folks do. If you're looking for your OA summary document, you can get to it either from the OAs tab if it's one that you've previously approved or one that you're trying to do some research on. Or if it's a current one, I can go to OAs needing approval. We would expect your queues to have 1 or 2 in them. I should mention that as well. Because of when we send you OAs, you should not be getting requests to approve OAs that often anymore. Just when we're awarding a lease, or if you've moved into the space or getting ready to move into the space and there's been project changes, that's when you would expect to get OAs now. Because we were doing a lot of testing, my queue was very full of some kind of placeholder ones. So that should also help you with your review and divvying it up. So when I click on a line, it takes me to the customer approval form, and I can get to that OA summary record by clicking here. It's going to open up a request for me to open the PDF and download the PDF, which I'd rather not do because it'll have to get into my hard drive for this. But you would click open and it would open like any other downloaded document in your system. The other place that you can get to it from the OA record itself, if I had gone in through all OAs and searched for an OA, when I get onto this screen, I go.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Deanne, but I think that it's only sharing the main screen that we started out on if it's opening up other windows. So perhaps
that might be a Zoom issue. Let me see if I can stop sharing and reshare.
Yeah, if it's a share all.
This is why we recorded our demos. All right, so now I'm in the OA document itself. And if I click here on notes and documents, hopefully folks can see that here, up here at the top now is my pre-approval OA. This will be that OA summary PDF right here. If it had been one that I had approved, it would show up as post-approval. And finally, if this is just an OA record, and GSA has never sent you the OA in the first place, you could find the document by going to reports. And hopefully the screen is showing as it loads. It will load the PDF version as a screen, and I can export it or print to PDF. This takes a little bit of time to generate, and especially doesn't like that I am on a system sharing it. So this is where you can see the OA summary report. Oh, here we go. Here we go. So this is the document in the screen view with the different pages. I can export or print it to get it to show up as a PDF. So hopefully that answers that. I'm going to stop sharing and give it back to you, Kenny. Me sharing a screen is a dangerous. All right. We have a question, Arissa, about scenario plans.
Yeah.
Do you want to kind of talk through that process again?
Yeah, there is on the portal page, there's access to all scenario plans, and you'll be able to access those for owned locations. Anything for lease occupancies, you would work with your regional GSA project team for those, but the all scenario plans will take you to the query for active and completed projects, and those scenario plans found in that query currently are provided with PDF. I know the question asked specifically for AutoCAD or Autodesk view, and currently those are just a PDF copy.
We are really closing in on the top of the hour here. So I just wanted to make sure time-wise, folks, I know you have a few more slides to get to. Just want to
Yeah,
keep everybody.
let's go ahead and go to the next slide.
Okay, there have been some questions on where to send certain questions, so we wanted to take some time to discuss those options. With Oasis, you can request clarification and send billing questions directly in Oasis. So if you're reviewing an OA for approval, you should communicate with the GSA Oasis team through the OA approval form in Oasis, like Dan had demoed earlier. If you have a general question or a question about a specific billing OA, you can use the submit request option to communicate directly in Oasis as well. If you have a question about an OA that has not been created in Oasis yet, you can reach out to your regional GSA project team, and that would be done outside of Oasis. The PBS OASIS inbox is another resource that we just talked about, but that's used more for general OASIS system questions opposed to specific OA or project-related questions, unless we have some of those specific examples like Deanne mentioned today, where we needed to escalate those, then those could be sent to the PBS OASIS inbox. And then next up, we have another poll question for everyone.
So we just wanted to check in with you as our presentation comes to a close, just to see, after attending today's session, if you got to see some of those screenshots, hear that explanation, and walk through those videos with our team and ask your questions, how much more comfortable do you feel about navigating OASIS on the new customer approval workflow? Significantly more comfortable, somewhat more comfortable, or gosh, I have some unanswered questions. I may need some more support. up and see where we stand here. It looks like yeah, we've got some of our users definitely feeling a little bit better about using the system thanks to the walkthrough today and the responses to your questions. But we do see there are certainly people out there who could use some more resources and support. And I think you've got a slide on that, Arissa, to help point people to all those great resources you have available to support them.
We do. Okay, so as we've talked about throughout the training today, we've linked some of those important resources, as well as Andrea mentioned, for your reference. So we have the GSA PBS OASIS website, which has, it's kind of the one-stop shop, as mentioned earlier, has information about OASIS, like the training user guide, access form. We've also provided the direct links for all three of those resources here as well. So you can see the training videos. It says new, so we just wanted to call out the new training videos, but the older videos that do still apply can also be found there. The updated version of the user guide. And additionally, we've provided the email addresses for account reactivation and then the general OASIS system questions that we just talked about. And finally is a link to our customer communication called the OASIS Bulletin. That link takes you to past bulletins and also provides information on how to start receiving those communications regularly if you do not already.
Just to close out for our presentation today, I want to thank all of you clients who are able to join us today for the presentation and demo and sharing with us your questions, your concerns, maybe even your compliments as our team works to continuously improve the PBS OASIS tool for you. And of course, thank you, Rissa and Deanne, and our PBS OASIS subject matter experts for fielding all these questions and helping us to get a better understanding of the new system environment. As mentioned earlier in the presentation, we are going to host a repeat of this session next week on Tuesday, June 18th from 2 to 3:30 p.m. Eastern. So if you get into the PBS OASIS tool between now and then and you find you have some additional questions that have come up, you're welcome to return. Go through the materials again with us and be able to speak to Deanne and Arissa directly in that session. So I'm going to drop the registration link for next week in the chat in case you decide you'd like to join us again, maybe get a little bit more clarification and hear that information just one more time. And then later today, after the recording renders, I'm going to be sending out the recording link from today's program to everyone who was in attendance today. And we'll be posting that recording link, the slide deck, and the formal Q&A from our sessions on the PBS website for OASIS for your reference. So thanks again for joining us and enjoy the rest of your day.